Welcome to the Well Path podcast, where we sit down with experts and entrepreneurs across fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, and spirituality, offering you an inside peek at building a business and a life that is truly aligned. I'm your host, Brooke Robbins. Let's get into it. Every yes that you say but don't actually mean is a no to something better. Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Brooke Robbins. Welcome back to another episode of the Well Path podcast. This episode is coming out late because I have failed to ruthlessly prioritize in my life recently. And that is exactly what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. We've all been there where you maybe have taken on a bunch of different things, and for a while, it sort of seems like it's working and you're able to kind of juggle all of these balls. And at some point, it feels like things are starting to slip out of control. And I cannot overstate the importance of regularly auditing the things in your life to determine what is actually A, giving more energy than it's taking, and B, functionally moving the needle on the things that matter to you most. And we're going to talk about what it looks like to effectively prioritize and the types of questions that you can ask yourself to get clarity on what is actually most impactful to stay on your plate and what are the things that it might be time to take off of your plate. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing that I want to start out by saying is that the reason why it's so important to constantly be auditing your life for the things that you're spending time on is because it is normal for you to outgrow things, for the ratio of energy that something takes and energy that something gives, or value that something gives and the energy that it takes to evolve and change over time. It is normal to outgrow things. The feeling of stuckness comes from clinging to an outdated version of someone, something, some situation. Life is truly like a river. It is always flowing. It is always evolving. And so what served you for a period of time in the past may not be serving you now. And it is really important to give yourself permission to tell yourself the truth and then move on. So when I think about auditing, my life for the things that I'm spending time on, I feel like there are two main categories that it's important to filter everything through. One is the energy category. So the question is, what is draining my energy more than it's giving energy back to me? What is, in other words, taking more of my energy than it is actually giving me energy? And the second metric is related to your goals and your vision for your life. So this is where, and if you haven't listened to the self-trust series, I highly recommend going back. The second episode of the self-trust series was about sort of knowing yourself. And part of that, we talked about understanding your core values, to an extent, building out your kind of life vision. And it's important to have a clear sense of that because that's going to be something that you can refer back to when you're making all of these other micro decisions in your day-to-day life. So based on your own goals, your own vision, and what you're optimizing for in your life right now, figure out of the things that you're spending time on, which are the things that are actually moving the needle on that versus what are some things that you might enjoy, but they honestly might be kind of a distraction. And it's the same type of way that you would audit like workflows if you we're working at a company and you might say, okay, well, this thing, might be a cool feature, but it's not going to move the needle on our business priorities and our business goals. You have to think of your life as like a little mini startup that you're owning and operating. And it's like, if your goal is X, is this thing actually moving the needle to get you there? Or is it just a distraction? And again, it could be the case that something was moving the needle for you for a period of time, but maybe that has shifted. And it is really just so key and so critical and so important to give yourself the permission to be a human being that changes and give yourself permission to be honest with yourself about the things in your life. Now, I think we've all been in situations where in retrospect, in hindsight, we realize that we stayed in a situation for too long. And again, that could be a relationship, it could be a job, it could be a situation, it could be a friendship. It could really be anything. It could be a place, a city. And there are a couple different reasons why we cling to things past their expiration date. Reason number one is fear of regret. Okay. Fear of regretting the decision to make a change. I think this is a big one. And the fear of regretting a decision ultimately boils down to a lack of self-trust in your own discernment. In other words, if you know yourself super well and you're in tune with your intuition, it kind of eliminates that fear that you're going to regret your decision looking back, because you know yourself well enough to know that if you're getting that feeling like this chapter like needs to be closed, you trust it. And you probably have a track record of making decisions like that and then realizing in hindsight that they were right to make. If you're not there yet, that's okay. Again, we have the self-trust series. I definitely recommend giving those episodes a listen if you haven't already, because this is something you can absolutely build. And a lot of it does come through experience, but it really is important to build a strong foundation of trust in yourself, in your ability to discern what is good for you, what is right for you, and being honest with yourself when that has changed. I think a helpful reframe for this as well is to recognize that truly everything in life is energy. And this is why I say, just looking at the ratio of how much energy something takes from you versus how much energy it gives you is actually a really good benchmark and a pretty like quick way to just assess how something is playing out in your life right now. And so I think because even things that take energy in the sense that, okay, like working out every day, like takes energy, it actually gives you more energy than it takes. And, you know, that's the thing, is that the things that are right for you, even if you would think they would make you more fatigued and make you more tired because maybe you're working harder, you're staying up late, whatever, in the grand scheme of things, holistically, they actually give you more energy because they kind of light you up. And so I think that's a really good framework if you feel confused about something, to just ask yourself that question. The right things, I always say, will either light you up or bring you peace. And the third component of that is it will amplify your feelings of integrity. So actually, this is kind of like a three-pronged metric. Things that light you up, i.e., give you more energy than they take from you. Does it bring you peace or does it bring you anxiety? And the third thing is it amplifying your feelings of integrity or diminishing your feelings of integrity? Does hanging on to this thing, whatever it is, again, whether it's a situation, a person, a job, whatever it is, does hanging on to it make you feel better about yourself, bring you higher into your own integrity? Or is it for some reason taking you out of integrity? That is like the third component to that. So just keep those three questions in mind if you are ever in a place where you feel like you're on the precipice of something, you're unsure if something is right for you or not, or you feel like you're in this period of transition. The second big reason why we cling on to things for too long is for the fear of letting other people down. This is like people pleasing at its finest. And I feel like people talk about people pleasing a lot. It's become like very much like mainstream to discuss, but it really is such a common experience, I think, especially among women. I'm sure among, men to an extent as well. But the thing that I want to really get across about people pleasing, as a recovering people pleaser myself, and I still very much struggle with this, to be very clear, is we think that people pleasing and wanting everybody to be happy with us and not wanting to let anybody else down is like selfless, right? We think it's like us being generous and putting other people before ourselves. In reality, though, if you're being really real with yourself, people pleasing is really about controlling other people. People pleasing is about controlling how someone else sees you. And the truth of the matter is, it doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. It only has to make sense to you. And the sooner you can free yourself from the bondage of caring intensely about what Joe Schmo and Nancy think about the decisions that you're making in your life, the freer you're going to be to act in alignment. And truly, when somebody is acting in alignment and is truly authentic and isn't afraid to say no and isn't afraid to set boundaries and isn't afraid to hold standards, that is magnetic energy. So actually, if what you're trying to do is be, quote, likable, it's such a better way to go to just truly be yourself, understanding that people will fall away and some people will be probably turned off by it. But those are usually the people that struggle to set boundaries of their own. In other words, people who resist your boundaries, people who respond poorly to your boundaries, respond poorly when you say, no, I can't do that, my plate is full, are the people who struggle to set those boundaries for themselves. And their frustration with you setting that limit is not actually about you. It's a reflection of their frustration internalized towards themselves for their inability to do so. If you don't believe me, just think about it. The people that know how to say no and know how to set boundaries basically never get annoyed or angry at somebody for doing the same back, right? They understand it. It's like, okay, they respect it, actually. The people who struggle to accept that from you are people who are notorious people pleasers themselves and don't know how to say no, because they then expect that from everybody else. And ultimately, it does come from an internalized sense of frustration at themselves for their own inability to choose themselves over others. The reason why this is so important is there is absolutely a hidden cost to the default yes. So there might be these little things, right? Little things that come up that your default, you might not even really think something through. If someone asks you for a favor, asks you for this, asks you for that, if your default is a yes before actually thinking through what is being asked of you, even small commitments drain your mental space, your emotional energy, and your time. So a really helpful practice that I try to implement, and I really highly recommend that you do too, is to delay the yes. So check in how your body feels about it. You don't have to say yes or no right away when someone asks you for something, asks you to do something. You can pause. You can be like, let me get back to you. So practice delaying your yeses, I think, is the moral of the story on that one. And I also just want to say that there's a lot of power in saying no. No is not a rejection to anybody or anything. It's just a redirection, right? And again, everything that you're saying yes to that isn't a full body yes is a no to something better that would potentially come along. And whether that's in the context of like an event that you get invited to, right? If you say no because it doesn't really feel like it's actually going to energize you, it might drain you. Maybe there's something else better that's going to come along. Or maybe the better yes was just that you actually needed a night to reset and unwind and be in your own energy. Like, there are so many different ways that this can play out, but it's really not about saying no to people. It's just saying yes to yourself and saying yes to what you need and saying yes to your own alignment, essentially. Now, I also want to point out that priorities are seasonal, and that is okay. And I think about this concept a lot, that it can be so hard to close chapters that we genuinely loved, that we genuinely are grateful for. And I think that sometimes the reason why it's really hard to fully close chapters is because it can sort of sometimes feel like you're disrespecting the chapter itself by nature of closing it. When in reality, you can love something for what it was, send gratitude towards it, be really grateful for the experience that you had, while simultaneously saying, I've gotten what I need out of the situation, and I'm ready to now close this door and move forward. Closing the door doesn't mean you're slamming the door shut and saying like, F you guys. Closing the door just means that whatever it is has had its time, has been helpful, you're grateful for it, and you lovingly close the door so that a new door can. And so I really want to just highlight that, because I think it is really normal and relatively common to feel guilty about closing doors. But the truth is that it is 100% normal. And again, life and human beings are ever evolving and changing, and circumstances are always evolving and changing. And so there's a lot of power in just owning the truth of when a chapter is ready to be closed and trusting that, and just moving forward, without any feelings of guilt, and just honestly moving forward from a place of gratitude for all of the experiences and lessons and energy and things that you did receive from that thing while the chapter was still relevant and aligned. Now, this also does tie in quite a bit to the concept of self-trust and just sort of like your own identity and confidence. And so I do want to take a second to just highlight that as well. I think that sometimes like saying yes to everything and honestly people pleasing can be glamorized a little bit, but I want to just give like a little bit of tough love advice and be super real that being a people pleaser and constantly putting other people's needs above your own actually signals a lack of self-respect. And it's going to be very challenging for you to build a true internal sense of self-worth and self-confidence that is resilient to external validation without actually having the ability to say no to things that are not aligned for you. And so every aligned choice that you make, and every time that you say no to something that is really a no, rather than saying yes out of fear of hurting somebody else's feelings, out of fear of someone being disappointed in you, every time you do that, you are building up your own sense of self-confidence and self-trust because you're allowing yourself to watch you show up for you and be there for you. In the same way that if a friend or maybe a parent when you were younger saw you getting picked on and like stood up for you and was like, no, like stop that. Like whenever you do that for yourself, and saying no to things that you don't actually want to do is a version of that, is going to strengthen the trust bond between you and you. So it may seem like a little thing, but the little things become big things, amplified and multiplied over time. So my call to action for everybody this week is to conduct a little bit of an energy audit on your life. Okay. Rate your top 5 commitments on their energy input and energy output, and start to really get honest with yourself about wherever you're spending your time, whatever it is that you're doing, job or jobs, hobbies, friend circles, whatever it is. Be honest with yourself about the energy ratio for each of these things. Also, map all of your commitments against your own core values and your own vision for your life. And if you're not sure what your values are, or you haven't really taken time recently to sit down and visualize your dream life and come up with your own life vision, again, I will link it in the show notes, but I recommend going back to the self-trust series. I'll link some resources in there as well, but that's really a good place to start because that is, again, that's kind of the rubric that you can constantly refer to and sort of cross-compare all of these different activities against to make sure that you're always constantly moving in the direction that you actually want to be moving in. It doesn't help to row faster if you're rowing in the wrong direction. In summary, ruthless prioritization is about choosing integrity over obligation, protecting your yes, protects your peace, and protects your energy. So my challenge to you is to say no to something this week. My challenge to you is to be honest with yourself this week about how things are stacking up in your life and what is giving you energy, and double down on those things and see if there's something you can take off your plate. Have an amazing rest of your week. I will see you guys in the next episode.